Hi, my name is Amanda and this is Copper, and I love reading while snuggling with this big fluff ball, so welcome to the channel. So it's already like middle of January, which is crazy, but I just wanted to take a moment to go back to 2024 and tell you guys about my favorite reads for each month of 2024. So I read 120 books last year, which is just crazy to me, but let's get into my favorite reads of the year. And if you want to grab some tea or some coffee and join me, I'm having some raspberry leaf tea because 'tis the time, I guess. Otherwise, it would most likely be coffee, but all right, let's chat books. Okay, so my favorite read in January was actually a reread, but I typically do a reread of ACOTAR every January just to start off the year right, because this is my all-time favorite. Would die for this series. I love them so much. These are my babies. So this was my favorite read for January. It will always be my favorite, and I will die on that hill. And I have two favorite reads for the month of February. The first one is going to be Manacled by Senlin Yu. I actually read Harry Potter, the whole series, for the first time in 2023, which is crazy. I loved it, and Manacled was just the next step in that series. And honestly, I think I love Manacled just a little bit more than Harry Potter. Might be a hot take. I just think Manacled was like the adult version that I wanted out of Harry Potter. I'm sure Harry Potter was amazing to read like as a kid. I was just a chicken and was honestly terrified by them and the movies, so I never got into them. But Manacled was just so incredible. It's definitely a time investment. That thing is like an insane amount of pages. I don't even remember how many it is, but she's chunky, but it's so freaking good. It was like so heartbreaking, but I loved every second of it. It's definitely a dark read, so check your trigger warnings for that one. But if you love Harry Potter and you want to get into some Hermione fanfic, you got to start with Manacled. And then my second favorite book of February was He's Not My Type by Megan Quinn. If you want to learn one thing about me, it's that I am a die-hard Megan Quinn fan. I discovered her in 2023 and I was just absolutely obsessed with her hockey series, The Vancouver Agitators. And this was book 4 of that series, I think. There is a 5th book out. I haven't read it yet. I'm dying to read it, but I just love her hockey series. It's so good. Her writing is absolutely hilarious. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. My favorite part about the series, I think, is the found family aspect. It's just like the teammates have this incredible bond that I just love, and they're all, like I said, hilarious, and it's just such a good read. It's my favorite sports read ever, and I will recommend it to anyone all the time. So if you haven't read it, you need to. Go read it. It's so good. My March favorite read was The Book of Azriel. I really enjoyed this book because it has a morally gray female main character, which was really fun to read. It wasn't my like all-time favorite read, but it was still a good book and my favorite for the month. So April is when I got really into reading. I was just completely unhinged from this point out. I was obsessed with book talk. I actually started my own book talk in like, I think March technically, but I have two favorite reads for April. The first one is gonna be Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. People either really love this book or really hate it, and I really loved it. I think a lot of people don't like it because it's such a long romance book, but I loved it. I love this whole series, the Knock 'Em Out series. Again, I'm a sucker for a found family trope, and this one definitely has it. I love the relationship between Naomi and Knox. You definitely get the grumpy sunshine, and even the relationship with the kid Waylay, that's her name. It was just so beautiful. I loved Waylay. She's so funny. So yeah, I loved this book. I love this series. I love this cover. I'm a sucker for a good cover. And then my other favorite for April is gonna be King of Greed by Anna Huang. I actually read, I think, the whole Kings of Sin series in April, but I think King of Greed is my favorite out of the, I think, 4 then, or maybe the 4th one came out in May. I don't know. Anyways, but still, King of Greed is still my favorite. I loved how different of a romance book it was, because this couple was already established, they were already married, and they just end up going through some shit and they're struggling and they have to find a way to keep their relationship. And I just really love that different take where it's not like an instant kind of love and then they fall in love and get married. And I just loved seeing that journey. I loved seeing him fight for her and figuring out that he was being an idiot and winning her back. Spoiler, but I loved it. So, and I have to say, I am so excited for King of Envy to come out this year. So excited. So I have 3 favorites from the month of May. The first one is going to be A Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn. Like I said, I'm obsessed with Megan Quinn. She's one of my auto-buy authors. So you'll see this as a theme for the year. But all of her books are just so good. They're hilarious. They're really spicy. So if you like that, definitely pick them up. But yeah, this is just such a good read. Highly recommend it. My second favorite, not that these are in order or anything, because I obviously can't pick favorites, but it's gonna be Exodus by Kate Stewart. Honestly, I'm not as diehard of the Ravenhood trilogy fan as a lot of people. I did really love this book though, but here's a hot take. I hated the finish line. So if I would have just stopped at this book, it would have been great, but here we are. And I still need to read One Last Rainy Day, but I'm just not emotionally ready for that. I'm actually waiting for a legit rainy day just so I can be in my feels and just sob the whole time. Which is what I did for this book. I was sitting in my backyard sobbing. If you know, you know. And then the last one for May is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I've read 2 other Emily Henry books, I think, at this point, but I think I love this one the most. This book was giving like Nick and Jess vibes from New Girl, and I love that show, so I loved this book. It was so good. Emily Henry is definitely another auto-buy author for me, especially after this book. I just loved it so much. See, things just keep getting more unhinged as the year went on. So I have 4 favorites for the month of June. The first one is gonna be This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I freaking loved this book. There was something about this book that really spoke to my soul. And I don't know, I cried a lot in this book. It was just, there's something about it that really hit me and that I really, really loved. I definitely want to reread this one. It was also a really fun summer read, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend this book. And we have Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I actually listened to the audiobook for this one, and it was so good. It was actually my first ever audiobook, which is fun. It was a little hard to get used to, just like listening to audiobooks. It was a little cringy at moments, but I think that's just because it was my first audiobook. Yeah, I loved this book. I have the other 2 for the series on my TBR shelf. I really need to read them because I just love this. And this was the start of my cowboy romance era, so. And then we have Echo of Wings by Sophia St. Germain. This is probably my favorite indie author. This was her first ever published book, I believe. There's book 2 of this series out already, and then she also just came out with another series. But I just loved this book from the very beginning. It has deadly trials, it has Valkyries, it has touch her and die moments. It's just everything you could want in a fantasy book, and I highly recommend you go check her out. It's so good. And then we have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This book was terrifying for me to read. The glossary in the beginning is 20 pages long, which was daunting to say the least. I didn't even read it because I could not wrap my head around it. I loved this book. I was confused 70% of the time, but it was still a fun ride. I think it'll be even better when I do a reread, which I will do before the second one comes out this year, I believe, I hope. But I loved the world building in this book, the dragon, and there's some twists and turns, and I just loved every second of it. I cannot wait to reread it and actually understand what was going on. So I actually discovered a lot of my new favorite authors in 2024, which I love. And one of those is Ali Hazelwood. I read a bunch of her books in 2024. And so my favorite for July is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I just really love her writing. It's not like your typical kind of mushy romance book. It just has this intellectual, nerdy, sciencey kind of twist to it, which I really love. And these books pack a good amount of spice in them, which I do love as well. So in August, I read the Mindfuck series and was completely blown away by that story. It broke my heart, but I freaking loved every second of it. It was such a good story. You get all the feminine rage you could ever want, and I loved it so much for that. That's definitely another morally gray female main character, and we love her for it. So that is definitely a dark read, so definitely check trigger warnings for that one. But if you can read it, I would highly recommend it. It was amazing. And I also read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This is another author that I fell in love with, and I can't wait to read more of her books. But I really, really loved this book. It was super spicy. I loved the story. My favorite part was when they were making out, but she has an allergic reaction because he ate a donut with, I think, peanut butter that she was allergic to. So they're making out, and then she passes out and goes into anaphylactic shock. It was hilarious. I loved this book. Definitely go read it. And then you already know Quicksilver had to be in this list. Such a good book. I loved how different this book was. I loved the magic system for the alchemy and all of that. I loved it. I mean, Kingfisher, need I say more? I love it. And you know what? The one thing that will make me love a fantasy book or any book is when there is a pet thrown in there. And so the little white fox in this book, Onyx, just made me love this book even more. But one thing that I did not like about this book was how white these pages are. I don't know if it's just me, but trying to read this outside in the summer was so difficult. But that's just a me problem, so yeah. So for September, I had my first ARC read, which was so fun, and I love that it was actually a good book. So I read A Tribute of Fire by Soraya Wilson, and I loved this book so much. I ate it up. I read it in one weekend. I was completely obsessed. It's a fantasy book with, I think, Greek or Roman mythology sprinkled in there. It was so good. You get deadly trials, found family, all the good stuff, and yeah, I'm still completely obsessed with the book. So if you haven't read it, definitely go check it out. It's one of my favorites for sure. And then I started the Magnolia Parks universe. I was a little hesitant to read these. I've heard such differing opinions on these guys, but I love them, which is actually surprising because I normally absolutely hate the miscommunication trope and the cheating trope. But here we are. I ate these guys up. Definitely gave me like Gossip Girl vibes, but in London, which I absolutely love Gossip Girl, so I think that's probably why I like them so much. I will say I'm definitely more of a Daisy Hates girl than a Magnolia girly. Magnolia just kind of drives me crazy with how everyone just loves her all the time, but that's okay. It's fine. We're fine. I still have Daisy Hates and the Great Undoing, and then Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home to read. They're definitely going to be reads for 2025. I can't wait to finish them, but I know they're gonna hurt, so I'm so terrified to read them. But dog hair. Okay, so October is the month that I fell in love with sprayed edges, apparently. So I read the Shepherd King duology. Absolutely loved it. One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. They are so good. I loved this magic system as well. It's so unique. It was such a fun read. I will say I think I loved Two Twisted Crowns more. I loved seeing Elm's story and I just love his character, but I really love this story. It was so fun to read and definitely a good read for spooky season. And then I read The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen, and this was just such a good book. After reading A Tribute of Fire, I was in like my Greek mythology mind space, I guess. So I picked this one up and I am so glad I did. The banter in this book was so good. I absolutely loved it. And Daddy Hades, just chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Then Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. This book, I will say though, this audiobook is amazing. I don't know that I would have loved this story as much if I just read it as the physical copy of the book, because the audiobook was that good. Like the narrators for that were so good. It's such a fun audiobook. I was laughing like 99% of the time, which is crazy because this is a dark romance. It's a stalker romance, so you wouldn't think that you would be laughing as much as you do for this audiobook, but it is just that good. So if you need a fun audiobook, definitely check this one out. I would recommend it always. And November was my cowboy era, I guess. I read Holding the Reins by Paisley Hope, and I freaking love this book. This book is so incredibly spicy. There are some quotes in this book that will forever live rent-free in my head. Specifically, the baptize me moment. If you know, you know. If you don't, then you definitely need to go read this book. It is so incredible. I don't even have words for like how incredible it was. I just need you guys to go read it. And then the second book for this series came out in January, I believe, Training the Heart, which I still need to read this month. I'm dying to read it. I hope it lives up to this book because it was so good. My cowboy romance era, I read Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I also read Wild Love, which was actually my first Elsie Silver. I guess I'm starting with her most recent series and maybe I'll work my way backwards, but I definitely see why everyone loves Elsie Silver. Loved Wild Eyes and Wild Love, but specifically Wild Eyes. I loved Daddy West so much. The part where Skylar and Emmy are in the kitchen and Emmy is climbing on the countertops and then she drops a glass and breaks it, and Skylar kind of low-key freaks out. They're both just waiting for Wes to freak out and yell at them. but West is just standing there and he starts cracking jokes and is just making sure that they're both okay. That part healed a little bit of my like childhood trauma. It was just everything to me, and I will forever love this book for that moment alone. But I also love Skylar. I love her character growth. It's such a fun thing to read. I love Skylar and Ollie's relationship, how he just trusts her right off the bat and talks to her. It's just so heartwarming, and I love this book so much. And then here we go again, How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. God, this book is so good. Listen, I love The Grinch, the Jim Carrey version. It's my favorite Christmas movie, and this book gives all those vibes, but with an insanely spicy twist to it, which I love. Like, I'm not mad about it at all. I also chose this book for my December work book club pick, and I think I shocked some of the ladies in my book club with how spicy this book was. I don't know that they were prepared for it, but it was still a fun ride. I loved it personally. I think it was a little bit too much for some of them, but that's why I'm here, because you all get me. You all love this just as much as I do, hopefully. And I hear that Megan Quinn is already working on Max's book for this series. So, like, I'm so excited. Oh, and also, I got a signed copy and a spicy page overlay. Love. And then I finished out 2024 with some really amazing reads for December. First one is going to be Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. This was such a surprising read. It was like, it's obviously a Christmas read, but it's set in Ireland, and I loved it so much. The story was just really beautiful. You get fake dating, which I love, and it was just such a good Christmas read. I highly, highly suggest it for next Christmas. And then I read Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. This book makes me want to open my own Christmas tree farm so that I can fall in love. But I will say I was expecting the love interest to be Beckett, which was honestly a missed opportunity. I'm pretty sure book 2 is Beckett's book, but still, I don't know. I think that would have been great. I still love this book. Such a fun read. I love the writing style for B.K. Borison. I can't wait to read more of their books. And then I read Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This was such a sweet, cozy read. The book was just so special. I loved seeing the characters grow from like their childhood and then in their adult lives, where they kind of come back together and become friends again, and then spoiler alert, they fall in love. Just love their story so much. It was heartbreaking, it was touching, it was everything you could ever want. And then we ended the year with a banger, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This is one of my new like all-time top favorite books. I loved this story so much. It just has such amazing life advice and life lessons in this book. It's just everything I could ever want in a romance book, in any type of a book. And you know the trend that's going around where it's like, he says I love you, but Beau says, you are my soul's purpose when, to know you, to love you, to build a family with you, to spend every day taking care of you, to watch you shine and get all the good things you deserve out of this life. Like, come on. Yeah. Love it. So those were my favorite reads of 2024. I know it's unhinged. I honestly have no idea how you guys picked one book for each month. I am just not that decisive. So there's my unhinged reads, which is a common theme for me. But I would love to know what your guys' favorite reads of 2024 were. If you had any of the same favorites as me, or even if you have differing opinions, I love to hear it. Yeah, I can't wait to talk more books with you guys and to just embark on this booktube adventure. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, love you guys. Bye.